We've already discussed all the big free agent moves and trades early in the offseason. A lot of the winners and guys who are rising up draft boards, but not everybody came out ahead. Let's talk about some players that could see their draft stock fall after free agency. Now, not just one of the biggest moves, but also a move that could have a big domino effect. A starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins, going from Minnesota to Atlanta. We already spent a whole video talking about how that affects the Falcons offense, but what does it do to the guys he left behind? Does that mean that Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are going to be fallers?
I think maybe a little bit. I think we'll see Justin Jefferson drop a little bit, but I'm not too worried about Justin Jefferson. I mean, even last year with Nick Mullins, he was mostly great. I think he's as close to quarterback proof as we've seen in the NFL. As long as his quarterback isn't absolutely terrible, and it's probably either going to be Nick Mullins, Sam Darnold, or maybe a rookie, I think he'll be okay. Addison, on the other hand, he was a guy I loved last year, loved the landing spot, but man, without Kirk Cousins, without an elite quarterback, is they really going to be able to support Jefferson and Addison? I have my doubts. So Addison's a guy I really haven't been drafting much since the Cousins news, but I'm still on Jefferson. I think he'll be okay.
Well, we've already had this question. People are worried about Justin Jefferson. Is he not an elite receiver for fantasy anymore? The answer is yes, he is still elite. No matter what, I know better than to even doubt a guy like that. I think he'll be fine no matter who's at quarterback. As far as Jordan Addison, I think it really, really depends. If it's Sam Darnold as the guy all season, I'm probably not really in on Addison. I think he'll be okay, but not great. And I think it seems like they're wanting to draft a rookie quarterback here with the moves they're making. But then it depends who, because I've got opinions on each of these rookie quarterbacks, and some guys I'll be fine with and some I wouldn't be. So for now, I do think Addison has to be considered a faller. And maybe the most surprising move of this entire free agent period was a trade where Keenan Allen was shipped to Chicago. I don't know if anybody saw that coming. Well, what does this mean not only for him catching passes probably from Caleb Williams, but also what does this mean for DJ Moore?
Yeah, I think for Keenan, we've talked about it a couple times, I think, but we'll talk about it again. I think Keenan is just going to be good, right? He's going to be good. He's not going to be what he was in LA, where he was, the only real target Justin Herbert had. He's not going to get that crazy volume, and I think that's going to limit his upside to some degree, but he'll still be good if he's like your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type. DJ Moore, unfortunately, has gone from a guy where I felt like I have to have DJ Moore on my fantasy teams now to a guy where it's like, yeah, I still like DJ Moore. I still think DJ Moore will have tremendous weekly upside. He's going to be the big play guy. He's going to be the X receiver. He's going to have Caleb Williams. But certainly his upside is capped a little bit too. But I think if I can get DJ Moore late second, early third, I'm still okay with that.
Yeah, well, talk about a receiver who has been pretty much quarterback proof. It's been DJ Moore. Gone over this again and again in the history of the quarterbacks he's had to deal with in his time at Carolina. It's not like he's played with a Pro Bowl quarterback at all. Now, he did show that connection with Justin Fields. That's not going to be there anymore. I think he could find a connection with Caleb Williams. So I'll just say that I'm not all over DJ Moore like I was before they added Keenan Allen. But yeah, third round, I'm totally fine with him. Keenan, and now, again, if you haven't already checked out that other video where we broke down what this means, it's not great for Keenan Allen. The injury risk we know is real with him. Having to get a bunch of targets to compensate for lack of other receivers, it's not going to be the case. So Keenan Allen, I'm pretty much out. Then staying in Chicago, they also went out and added a running back in DeAndre Swift. So does that take Rashawn Johnson completely off draft boards?
I don't know if it takes him completely off, but it certainly makes him less appealing. They're paying DeAndre Swift pretty good money for a running back these days, and I can't imagine they went out and signed DeAndre Swift because they're like, we love Rashawn Johnson so much. That being said, I still think Rashawn Johnson's a good player, and he still could win this job, and even if he doesn't, he's still an injury away from being an every week, almost a must-start running back. So I think as a late-round handcuff, he's fine, but the thoughts I had earlier in the offseason of, hey, this could be the Rashawn Johnson breakout year. Yeah, that may not happen.
Doubt it will happen. And here's the thing. It's like last year we kept thinking he just needs a chance, right? Just needs a chance. He had a, unfortunate injury. And then, they were trying out the veterans with Foreman and Herbert. It's like, Just give him a chance. Maybe this year he'll get the chance. He's not getting the chance, and maybe there's a reason they don't want to give him the chance. He'll be fine, but he's just a backup. And even if something happens to Swift, I don't know how much stock we can really put into Johnson carrying fantasy teams. So I'm not completely out, but I'm pretty close. The other team making major moves, which nobody saw coming, is Tennessee. They added a running back in Tony Pollard. Does that completely kill the vibe with Tyjae Spears in fantasy? How do you see this working out? Are you down on both now?
I think you have to be down on both. I mean, this definitely killed the vibe for Tyjae Spears, but it also killed the vibe for Tony Pollard. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a clear number one running back. I mean, maybe Tony Pollard gets most of the between the tackles work, but I don't think that's really what he excels in anyways. Tyjae Spears was great in the passing game last year. Tony Pollard is great in the passing game. I think they're just going to be a 1-2 punch here that's going to be really good for the Titans, but not so good for fantasy. So definitely has, ruined the thunder of both these guys.
I keep saying this is just so weird. It's not like it's so shocking that Tennessee added a running back. We knew they needed somebody, not even to say to replace Derrick Henry, but at least to try to fill some of the void, someone to complement Spears, right? It's just weird that it was Tony Pollard because these two running backs feel so similar, and I'm not even sure how they're going to be used. Is Pollard going to be the third down back? Is Spears going to be the third down back? And what's the split going to be? And I don't like being confused, and I don't like not knowing how they're going to be used and who's going to get more run. And so I'll probably avoid this situation. I don't even know if I feel great about Tony Pollard at all after last year, and now he's going from Dallas to Tennessee. So I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach. And the other major move that Tennessee made was to add Calvin Ridley. Now, it's not like everybody was super high on DeAndre Hopkins necessarily as a Titan, but how down are you now?
I'm out. I'm out on DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, I was barely even in on DeAndre Hopkins last year when he was the only guy to throw to. They just paid Calvin. What is Calvin Ridley, like the 10th? 8th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL or something crazy like that. Like, they paid this guy big time money, and there's still question marks about Will Levis. Like, can Will Levis support anybody as a fantasy viable wide receiver, let alone 2 or more fantasy wide receivers? I'm not drafting DeAndre Hopkins. 32 years old, wasn't even that good last year. Now Calvin Ridley there. No way am I touching DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, with Hopkins, I'll just say he's really not a faller for me, because I think he was low enough already. Nobody was really in on him being a fantasy stud anymore. Nobody really expects as much from this offense. And even with all the moves they're making now, I think it's just going to suppress expectations for Hopkins more, where I think he's actually worth drafting as your 4th receiver. Sure, this offense does want to throw the ball, obviously. Can they do it successfully? Well, we'll see. But I think Levis does have a good arm. He seems to have a pretty good head on his shoulders, at least in terms of quarterback decision making. So I think Hopkins is fine as long as you don't count on him as your starter. What are the expectations for Austin Ekeler now that he's a Washington Commander? Well, I'm not sure what to expect of him, but I know I expect this has got to affect Brian Robinson Jr. That's a guy I loved last year. Do you love him this year?
I can't say I love him anymore, but I still like him, especially he's still going outside the top 100 picks, whereas before it was like, Brian Robinson is going out the top 100 picks. You have to draft this guy. It's now like, yeah, you can draft this guy if you want. We know Austin Ekeler is probably going to get some kind of a role here, but is he really the same guy? I mean, are you going to chalk up last year to the ankle injury or maybe just age and father time and how running backs kind of progress through their careers? I'm going with the latter. I think he's just not the same guy. I don't think he has the burst, the juice anymore. So I think Brian Robinson gets the majority of the touches here. The problem with Austin Ekeler is that pass catching kind of upside that we saw in spurts with Brian Robinson last year. We're probably not going to get it this year. So now he's just kind of a late round good running back pick versus a late round must-have running back pick.
Yeah, this can't be good for Brian Robinson. Even if Ekeler isn't nearly the same player he was, he's still going to be on the field. And there's still a lot of questions about this Washington offense in general. Like, who's the quarterback going to be? That matters a lot. But still, the fact is that I liked Robinson because I saw him taking on a bigger role in the passing game. And like you just said, that's not going to really be there because that's the main reason I think they brought in Ekeler, to be that pass catcher, to be that that third down back that they can trust in pass protection. So I think Robinson is nothing more than an RB3 right now. You remember last year when about week 6 or 7, the number one receiver in fantasy was Adam Thielen for Carolina? Yeah, that happened. I don't think that's going to happen this year because they added Deontay Johnson via trade, and they may do more in the draft. We'll see. Chris, I have a feeling I know where you're going with this, but are you in on Thielen next year?
No, I mean, I wasn't in on Thielen last year, and for, like you said, for 6 or 7 weeks, I was looking pretty bad, but he eventually, did what I expected him to do, which is nothing. Why is he going to do anything this year? He was living off volume early in the year last year. It's a whole new coaching staff. They brought in Deontay Johnson. He's getting all the volume. Like you said, they may still draft another wide receiver. It never made sense that the Panthers signed Adam Thielen to go with Bryce Young. I think we're not even going to see Adam Thielen. Maybe one game he has a good game this year. No way am I drafting Adam Thielen.
Even if they hadn't gotten Deontay Johnson, I think Thielen would still be a faller for both of us just because look what happened toward the end of last season. They realized it was not the solution to Bryce Young's development. It's just to check it down to him across the middle of the field every time. So Thielen will still be draftable late if it's really late. All right, let's head back to Chicago. They weren't done. Got a running back, got a receiver, and they also added another tight end in Gerald Everett, 2 years, $12 million. Does this mean bad things for Cole Kmet, and is he fantasy startable?
I think it's got to mean bad things for Cole Kmet. Gerald Everett is a pass-catching tight end. He is not a blocking tight end. He's not one of these guys that's like, yeah, we're getting him because we need help in the running game or whatever. It's like, no, he's out there to catch passes. And then you combine that with the fact that they also added Keenan Allen and they're going to have a rookie QB. I was in on Cole Kmet, if it was going to be Justin Fields and DJ Moore and they were just going to run it all back. Maybe even if it was just going to be Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet. But now with Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett and Caleb Williams, I don't think Cole Kmet is a tight end I want in fantasy.
Look, there's only so many mouths to feed, and let's face it, as good as we think Caleb Williams might be, I still don't feel like they're going to support 2 pass-catching tight ends on top of 2 number 1 receivers. Cole Kmet, to me, is nothing but depth in a best ball league. And then there's really no argument about it. The biggest loser, reality, fantasy this offseason was Justin Fields, and well, maybe anybody who has Justin Fields in a dynasty league. The backup quarterback in Pittsburgh to Russell Wilson, is there any way he is not a massive faller?
No, he's absolutely a massive faller. And I'm still surprised how high he's going in best ball drafts. Like, we don't see other backup quarterbacks getting taken that high. I get it that, like, if he ever becomes a starter, we know the upside he has. But right now, being the backup quarterback, I'm not sure how you can be drafting Justin Fields other than as, like, your QB3 in best ball leagues.
Yeah, this really is still shocking to me. We may never know what he could have done in the NFL. I mean, we'll see. But right now, Justin Fields, as much as we've seen him have those big games at times, I feel like the run is probably over. Most of those players we just talked about, we're not touching in fantasy drafts this year, or at least where they're being drafted. But you want to know which running backs you should be in on? Well, these are the only running backs we like next year.